let's go into Jordan Peterson. I think this would be a really good one. Just because, man, I think he's spoken to our generation of men in a way that no one else has. He's connected with us in a way that nobody else has on the same level, and probably done more good and produced more transformation for good through his life than maybe anyone else that I can think of at the moment, especially again, specifically for young men in this generation. And so I think one of the things that I see in Jordan Peterson, I absolutely look up to, is just this perseverance and this drive towards what is good, and but also an openness to being wrong about things and continually adjusting when needed towards the end goal of what's good, but then doing everything to, giving your whole life towards something, not wasting your time. Like, guaranteed Jordan Peterson's never watched The Office or Lost all the way through, Dude, every episode of every season.
I hear what you're saying, but not true. Jordan Peterson, I'm sure he probably hasn't seen those, but he talks all about how much he's watched The Simpsons. So similar.
Really? Okay. All right.
Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good for me to know though. Okay. Even The Simpsons is a little bit more intellectual than those other two things, but but still a TV show. Yeah. Okay. Fair point. So yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is, or just to get at, is there's like this underlying drive towards accomplishing a goal, or towards pushing humanity or our generation, or break it down further into the people that he's immediately responsible for. So like, he's a professor, his students, for years, just giving his guts towards writing a book like Maps of Meaning, and developing these lectures on the Old Testament, all these things that just take, you imagine the depth of understanding that you need to develop in order to produce some of the things that he's produced. And you only do that kind of research and gain that kind of knowledge if you are so committed towards working towards the common good. True. And that's so I think there's that dedication, that perseverance, and that willingness to put so much time in, not really for yourself. Maybe a little bit, like you want to understand for yourself, but he's developing his mind and his understanding on those issues and those ideas, so that he can teach them, and so that he can extract the truth out of those things, and then give it to other people who might never be able to have it for themselves if he didn't play that role. And so, there's something about that where it's just like years of hiddenness, but just complete dedication and drivenness towards something that's good and worthwhile is so impressive. And so it's only one aspect of Jordan Peterson, but it's a huge one.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think I never thought of it in exactly that way. I think that's a huge element of why both you and I and so many young men admire Jordan Peterson, the man, not just Jordan Peterson, the intellectual, but Jordan Peterson, the man. I think, as you were saying that, the things that were coming to my mind were like, he talks about in the 80s and going through the Cold War, he would have these terrible nightmares of catastrophe and how close the world came to complete annihilation, which it really did, like especially in the Cuban Missile Crisis. A couple times, really the whole planet was close to destruction. And we look back on that, we go like, oh yeah, it's good that didn't happen. But we pay no attention to how insane that was. And somehow we collectively decided, okay, this thing's, this human thing is worth continuing. And that's why the world still exists today, right? But he knew the reality of that, and he just had nightmares about it because he understood the reality of it, because he studied history, because he knew what happened all through the 20th century. He knew about the evil of the human heart and the kind of darkness it was capable of, and it terrified him. And he always says, that terrified me so much that I just became obsessed. He says he thought for like 16 hours a day. Almost all of his waking time was thinking about these issues and just developing these issues. And it took him a long time to make a plan of how I'm actually gonna get to the bottom of some of these problems, or do my part to solve some of these problems. And that developed into him writing this, insanely deep book, Maps of Meaning, which then led into, more and more and more things. And maybe through, maybe just naturally, but maybe through supernatural intervention or synchronism or whatever, he ends up, going through a crazy controversy, which raises him to the public eye. And as soon as he gets to the public eye, it's like, everybody's like, whoa, you have so much to offer. So yeah, it's interesting because he always says, he almost says it like, I was forced by my own fear to figure this stuff out. And I would say that's true. That's true. But he wasn't forced by his own fear to get to the good and to get to a good solution. I would say that's the choice that's so admirable that we see playing out over time. And we've seen it. Like, I see him now, or in the last few years, and I see a man who has like a deep belief in the goodness of the world. And he's on the side of us. He's on the side of humanity. And there's something about that which he decided for himself, when maybe there was another Jordan Peterson who actually made the choice to he was just as afraid and he had just as much understanding. But what he did instead was he turned on a video game and cracked open a cold one. And he didn't deal with it in the belief of goodness, or even the belief that he could make a difference in the way that Jordan did.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. And now that he has been launched into the public eye over these last few years, I think in that time, another huge aspect of why I look up to Jordan Peterson is his willingness to say what he honestly believes, and also his desire to do that in a way that informs people rather than tears people down. And he talks about it openly, this idea of using minimum necessary force to, I don't know if he would even say win an argument, or to, display the winning idea, the better idea in a debate or argument. And that just shows a value for other people and a love for humanity and a love for people that he doesn't agree with, and that he could just kind of follow suit with how the rest of things go and just lose all respect for them or something, because, well, how could you possibly not see it my way? But I think there's something about him where, he says what he honestly believes, but he does it in a way that he values people so intentionally. And I think that the combination of those two things, and obviously, his ability to articulate these ideas so clearly, all that together just makes his speech and his communication something that I think we should all aspire to.
Yeah, totally. I think we shouldn't also look past the reason that I think a lot of people do listen to somebody who knows how to speak. And I think that plays into it as well, is he is just that good at speaking. And part of that is, the way the way that he is able to speak well, literally speak well, but also like what you're saying, that fairness aspect, that he's always giving people the benefit of the doubt. And that's something particularly why I mentioned Sam Harris. Like, Sam Harris is probably at least the top 5 most famous atheists in the world. But that's something that I highly admire in Sam Harris, is he definitely not to the level of Jordan Peterson, but he definitely has this value for the opposing point of view that he truly respects. It's not just that he's acting like he respects, that he gains people's trust. He truly respects it. And I think that's really good. And that's something that when I see people who agree with me, I just wish that they had that. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I listen to people who, not even like politically, but just people in general. I don't want to name names on this because it's kind of a bit of a dig. And what what I feel like is I just wish that people had that kind of value for the opposing point of view, which is scary because it's any topic. When you see the other point of view, it's a lot harder to still believe what you truly believe. If you have, no personal example necessary, but if you have a strong stance on abortion and then you sit down and you debate 12 people for 11 hours about abortion, you come out of that feeling like 11 hours. I sat down for 11 hours, but it was only like 7 hours of debate. You come out of that feeling like, yeah, I still believe the position that I held because the reason I believe them were correct, but actually seeing the other side for all of its worth takes away some of the motivation from the side that I had when I didn't fully understand their side to that degree. And it's kind of scary. It's a dip into hell. It's like the Phoenix going into the fire. And then the thing that can happen is either you get burned and that's it, you're gone. Or the alternative is you come out and you emerge from the flames as a phoenix and you are all the more powerful. So I feel like these are deep metaphors, but I wonder, one other thing I want to mention, just to say it is that like, that's what I was going to say. The word adopt responsibility, even the name of our podcast, that's like a tip of the hat to Jordan Peterson for what he's contributed. Like both you and I felt like these are the words. It's the idea that we want to get across, but we didn't want to call it taking responsibility or responsibility or anything. It was adopt responsibility because those are words that he chose on his own. And I feel like it's a tip of the hat to him for us to even have chosen to call the podcast that name. Like we highly regard this man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could have been a lot of different names, and we talked through a lot of different names. But when it came down to it, we felt like this would be the name that would attract people who not thought even most like us, but were the most interested in, adopting responsibility.
Whatever this is. Yeah.
Whatever this is. Right. Yeah. We'll be most interested in this because it seems like the wording, the language that most clearly communicates what we desire to be doing with our lives in general and what we're trying to do as well, in part through this podcast. And so there you go, Jordan Peterson. So,